Welcome to Beast TV. What was that? You better get a fresh dip and buckle up. Larry, I just want to commend you on you being on the show tonight, because I know that you have been glued to the TV all week watching the Democrat convention. And so it really says a lot to me about your dedication not to miss the last night of the Democratic convention. So
well, I figure it's all going to be free, so I'll catch up with it later.
Okay.
Speaking of free, our friend Jeff Townsend just bought me a steak dinner and said to make sure I get that money.
Oh,
yeah.
We thank you, Jeff, and I don't know if I've told you or not yet today, Jeff, but I love you, Jeff Townsend. I do. He's one of my favorite people in this whole wide world. And we want to welcome everyone to the chat room. If you have questions tonight for Cam, just put them in all caps. And Shelly is going to be sending us the questions, and we will ask them at the end of the show.
Now, speaking of the chat, we do from time to time have younger kids in the chat, so please keep the conversation a little civil, and let's not make each other mad with our conversation in there.
I don't know. Before we bring Cam on, I just wanted to do a shout out. We had a subscriber to send a message to one of our producers and ask them for me and Larry's address. And this subscriber made for us a very nice gift. And it touches my heart when there are people out there that are good-hearted and just want to do something nice for somebody else. So we're not going to embarrass him or her. So we just want to say thank you, and we appreciate it so much.
No doubt, and we'll put it to good use. And you'll get to join us to use it.
Well, Larry, why don't you bring on our guest?
Well, our guest tonight, we met this man. How many years ago was it, Mark?
I don't know. 3, 4, at least.
I'd say 4. But we were way down in Mississippi and met a man they call Cam Buckner. And he went on to greatness as Dixie Cryptid. Who would have ever thought it? How you doing, Cam?
Hey, y'all don't bother me. I'm watching the Obama speech.
Oh.
Has he said anything good about anybody yet?
He's bragging on Trump, man. He's bragging on Donald Trump. I'm surprised. I don't think there's any love lost between those two.
I don't believe so.
No. You know, Cam, I believe one of the reasons Dixie Cryptid has been so successful is your personality transmits through to the audience. And I believe your listeners pick up on your sincerity and passion to bring joy into their lives. And I can attest to you that this comes from Cam's heart. But what I really appreciate the most about Cam Buckner is his love and devotion he has for his family and friends.
He left on that one.
I'm sorry, I just couldn't quit after that. Well, I don't know. I was talking to my wife. We were driving somewhere this past week. I think we were going to Tupelo, and we rarely talk about the channel, but we were talking about it, and I don't know how it came up, and she said, I was watching something. She doesn't watch this Bigfoot stuff at all. She said, and she follows a lot of cooking channels and things like that. And we bought one of these new skillet grills, that are outside, and they got that big skillet on them.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, we ate steak from it tonight. Oh man, it just tastes so good on there. But she watches all those kind of videos, and she says, some of these people just seem so fake. They're not that way on the channel. And I'm like, well, they have to, they're doing a show. She goes, but you're always just the same old goofy guy every time. And I'm like, oh, thanks. I appreciate that. I don't know how to be somebody else. And I just can't, I figured I can't act very well. I wouldn't do very well in Hollywood. So I don't know. It's kind of silly, I guess. Kind of silly, but I just try to be myself. So.
Well, it works. You're a good dude, and it transmits through the videos and everything you do. And I can assure everybody that don't know Cam that who you see now is who he is whenever the camera is not on him or the mic's not live. He's a good dude no matter what.
It's goofy as hell all the time. I know what I will not do. I won't eat chili off the ground.
You will if you're hungry.
You wouldn't want to tell that story, would you, Cam?
No, I'm not going to tell it, but I'll tell you, these guys are real rawhide bushwhacking campers. If they get hungry and they knock a can of chili off on the ground, they just get spoons and start eating it up right out of the dirt. Worms and everything.
That added fiber from the leaves is good for you.
That's right. I'm looking over at Larry and going, Larry, you eating that off the dirt? And he goes, man, I'm hungry.
Yeah, I was looking forward to that can of chili.
Oh, so much fun. I'll say this. These two guys with Beast TV and Sawdust Beast Channel I always say they're my favorite researchers, and there's only about 4 or 5 of them I even like to be around. And these are my two favorite. And anytime they invite me to go anywhere, I do everything I can to get there because it's going to be a hoot. Every time it's going to be
fun. We try to make it fun, and we're really not researchers. We just go out there and have fun.
You want to tell us your first impressions of when you met me and Larry about 4 years ago?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. The Outlaws had put out the word, and I was not attached to any group. I was just a fan, just like anybody else. And I think it was Bear I think it was Bear put out the word, if you live in Mississippi and you want to go on a Mississippi outing with the Outlaws, send me a private message. And I talked to my wife, April, and I said, I'd like to go on a Bigfoot camp out. She goes, well, you better go. So I didn't have anything going on that weekend, or I kind of blocked it out, and it was all set. So I drove down there. It's about a 3.5 hour drive for me. And I showed up, and I guess to make a long story short, all of them. I mean, there were probably, I guess that was a Friday, and I was maybe the second or third person there. I may have been the first. I don't know. I thought maybe I was in the wrong place, but people started showing up, and I immediately felt included. Just the nicest people I've ever met. And I thought, this is really special. And I could only stay one night. I had to get back. There was a birthday party or something going on the next day. But yeah. And then I got to meet Mark and Larry and Dan and Vicky and Bear and Tammy and all the crew that was there, and some new people I think had showed up, and I didn't know who knew who, and all that stuff. But I think and then a guy showed up, Jack Russell showed up, and he said, I know you. And I said, I remembered him. Come to find out, his sister and my sister were best friends in high school. And his sister is she's a beautiful girl, and she's a very talented woman. And at the time, she was a singer, really good singer. She sang at my wedding back in 1981. And here I am on a Bigfoot excursion down in the middle of Mississippi, and I run into her brother, and he was a little bitty kid at the time. We were older than him. But so I got to meet him and Barry and Mark and all those people. And I'll tell you, it's sometimes, and there were some other people that showed up. I didn't know who they were, and I didn't get a chance to really get to know them. But what's funny is even today, I get texts from those guys. A lot of those guys I've only seen one time, and I get texts from those guys. Hey, what are you doing? I mean, a real friendship developed. And I think it's all because you all are such nice people. And I thought I fit in here really well. And so we've always all gotten along, and we've always had a great time. But later in the night, I met Mark, and I'll never forget Mark, because he's got that long goatee, and he just, when you first meet him, he looks kind of mean. He's kind of scary.
That's what she said.
But I figured out he wasn't a serial killer. So I got to know him and Larry, and they started the campfire. We were all around the campfire, and after a while, I noticed Mark and Larry weren't there, and I kind of wanted to talk to those guys. I wanted to kind of sit around the campfire and hear some of their stories. And at this time, this was 2 or 3 years before I ever started a YouTube channel. I mean, I hadn't even thought about starting this YouTube channel. I said, where's Mark and Larry? And they said, oh, they're already gone down off in the woods camping. And I said, well, we were all camping right around there. And they said, well, they go down in the woods, and y'all had crawled off way down in this deep gully or holler or whatever people call it. And they had set up hammocks down there, and they said they're boogering. They're trying to get activity, right? And they were probably half a mile away, way off in the woods down there by themselves camping. And the next morning I woke up, and I like to go for a bike ride or a walk in the mornings. And there was a good walk from the campground all the way back out to the road that came in the park. It's probably about a 3/4 of a mile. And I walked up through there, and I got almost to the end, and I looked down there, and sure enough, there were those hammocks hung up in those trees, and Mark and Larry sitting down there eating breakfast or something. Oh, hell, they're so crazy. I don't even want to say hi to them. They may want me to come down there and camp with them again some night, and I ain't doing that.
But you did. So what was your thought? This was your first outing you've ever been on. Maybe your first Bigfoot excursion or attempt or anything. What was your mindset going, and what did you walk away with?
Well, my impressions of the whole weekend, and I've still got tons of video of that. I got video of all y'all, and I've never shown any of it or shared any of it, but all these stories being told. So you've got one group who, and they're a little bit older generation like me, maybe even in their, I'm in my 50s, probably in their 60s. And
I'm 51.
They kind of stick close to camp and, you know, sit around the campfire, and they love to visit. And excuse me.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to turn that phone off. And then there's Larry and Mark, who are off doing their own thing. They're just off doing, they're like the you know, the two little autistic kids off in the something. And really, I kind of looked at them as young kids. Just they could care less what's going on at camp. What they wanted to do was get in the woods and do what they do, which is provoke encounters with Bigfoot. That's what Mark and Larry do. And so that was my impression. You've got the people that have been friends for years and years and years, and they love getting together, spending time together and eating and all this. And then there's these two rawhide dudes off in the woods by themselves. And I remember when I came back, I told April, I said, these two guys are nuts. They're nuts. And I've told y'all this before.
Yeah.
They're more rawhide than like elk hunters and stuff, because y'all were telling me about some of your bushwhacking excursions and things like that. And I've actually been on one with you. And so, yeah, that was my impression of, I got kind of two, and I know, you know, that other group went out and they rode the roads and were making calls and things like that. And I've done that with them before, and that's fun. That is fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what y'all do is stuff that I would be more interested in if I had time. So, yeah, that's my impression of it. And there's all sorts of people that do this. There are the sorts that just love the friendship and the camaraderie of the, you know, surrounding the topic and the friendships they've made through all the years. And then there's the real, you know, then you've got Eric and Kane, who they're just like y'all, just rawhide guys that just go all the time.
They're probably a couple of notches ahead of us. I'll give them props. We go, but they go.
And what I love about Mark and Larry and the rest of the Beast crew is that you're not, you know, you've got a presence on social media. You've got your YouTube channel and a great Facebook page. But you don't use your knowledge and beat people over the head with it. And that's why, because I don't like that, and I don't do that with my stuff. Of course, I'm not into the research and evidence end, but still, you welcome all views, you welcome all people, and you're always very cordial and nice to people, and you're just fun, nice people to be around. And I'll say this to your audience now, and I don't know if you have open invitations for, I think you've got an outing coming up this fall if the COVID thing straightens out.
Yeah.
If you ever wanted to come join in, if it's an open, and I may be speaking out of turn here, and I don't want to do that, but if you get a chance to come sit around a campfire with these guys, you would just feel so welcome and included. And that's you know, that's an experience that sometimes you don't even get in most churches. You know, churches should be inclusive of everyone, not just the people that are members of the club. And that's the way you guys are. You're, you know, people who aren't necessarily members of your, you know, small fraternity of researchers are always welcome at your campfire. And Mark especially is always eager to share his knowledge and mentor, you know, younger people or newer people getting into the subject. Heck, we went out of town Mark and I did about a week ago, and he's just hot on some new people that he's met, and he goes, I want to get with them, I want to show them what I know, and how to set up sound equipment, how to set up. He's just always eager to teach people. So I know I'm talking too much, but I just love you guys.
No, that's but whenever we do meet somebody, I always treat people the way I want to be treated, first of all. But we can always learn something from, somebody that's new and hasn't got experience in the Bigfoot world. They've got some kind of knowledge or something to share, or a different angle to look at it that may help. So I'm not going to be a pompous, egotistical person and think I know this or that. I'll tell anybody I don't know anything. I told a guy on the page the other day, he comes down in 1 minute, I can tell him everything I know about Bigfoot, and then we can go hike and look. And that's the truth.
And a lot of times you get in these situations and there's always, there's always a big alpha male who's trying to direct people, and he's always serious. And, there's always one person for me that kind of, in a subtle way, kind of screws the whole thing up. Let's just have a great time. Everybody do what they want to do. When you're with the Sawdust Beast guys and the Beast TV guys, you never feel that undercurrent of, somebody's got a big ego, somebody's got to be an alpha male and got to direct everybody and order everybody. It's very, very, what's the word? Everybody just gets kind of libertarian. Everybody gets to do what they want to do, and everybody gets listened to, and everybody gets a chance to talk. Nobody dominates the conversation. I just love being around you guys, and I'm really looking. I'm going to be at your outing if there's any way possible. Is you going to do it at LBL?
Yes. Yeah, most likely.
I can't wait.
Well, talking about somebody about domination. Now, Cam hollered at me last week and said, "Look, Mark, I'm going to Alabama to meet some people, and so why don't you just ride along with me?" And so I rode down to Cam's house, and we rode out to Alabama, and that was really a fun trip. And we met some really interesting people. And I'm going to tell you, when we got there, Todd and Michelle had to run into town, and me and Cam was just sitting around the camp, and a car pulled up, and a girl got out and said, "Is this where Michelle is camping at?" And we said, "Yeah," and they parked, and they got out, and she was with the newspaper. And so she asked if it would be okay if she could interview us and write up an article in the paper about us. And I'm going to tell you, I can't even think of the right word, because envy is not the right word. I just got to give kudos to Cam, because within 5 minutes, instead of Amy interviewing us, Cam was interviewing Amy. And it was just fantastic. I see why Cam is so good at what he does, because he cares about people, and he wants to know about people, and he wants to learn about people, and he's not going to dominate some conversation. And Amy, she was there with a friend of hers from North Carolina named Jason. Why don't you tell us? Jason had an interesting occupation. Tell us about Jason, Cam.
Yeah, first, Larry, I'm sorry you weren't invited, but it cost too much to feed you, buddy.
I was going to say, I'm really disappointed. I called y'all at lunch to ask y'all how many times you stopped and eaten, and you said none. And I'm like, what is wrong with y'all?
That's right, because you weren't with us. We didn't have to stop and eat. No, this guy was, I didn't expect that there would be reporters there, but there were. And so we kind of got to know them. And of course, I'm always inquisitive of everyone. Anybody I meet, I want to know. I'm always interested in what make people tick. What do they do? You know, why do they like that job? Do they like their job? Why do they like it? You know, all that stuff. Probably to the point where I annoy people, but I'm really curious all the time. And so I got to asking this. This woman was a reporter, and she didn't. I was curious if she covered the true crime stuff, and she didn't, because I like to listen to true crime podcasts. And so she was just a regular reporter, you know, for Society and, you know, events around that area. And so I thought, well, that's cool. So I started asking this other guy, so what do you do? He's in I don't know what the name of the union is that all these actors and writers and makeup artists and all work under, but you know, they all do really well. I mean, they get paid no matter what they do. They all get, if you're just a security guard on a movie set, I mean, you make good money. Yeah. And once you get in that union, you know, pretty much wherever there's a production going on and they need somebody, you go and they put you up and they feed you and they pay you. He's a makeup artist, and he had worked on I think he was her boyfriend. Is that right, Mark?
We're not really sure, but very well could have been.
But maybe he was, maybe just a friend, but he had worked on all kind of horror movies, and he was with the COVID thing going on, he had not been working the last 2 or 3 months, but he had a job coming up in, I think they were filming in Wilmington for the last Scream movie, Scream 5. And he was telling us all the things that they had to do to make up those, you know, those faces for the horror movies and things like that, wounds and gashes in people's heads and all that kind of stuff. And I've always been really interested in how, you know, they produce those films and how much goes into it. And it is a big deal. It's a big deal. And it takes tons of people to do it. And, but yeah, he was telling us all about that stuff. And Mark and I were just, oh man, tell us more. We just wanted to hear more and more and more about it. So, out in the middle of the woods in, you know, Talladega National Forest in Alabama, we run into a makeup specialist that works for Hollywood. It's the craziest thing in the world, but he was an interesting guy for sure.
You know, I tend to clam up whenever somebody's interested and just start soaking it in. But the way that your mind works and the questions that you were asking him questions I thought, man, I would have never thought to ask that. Why don't you tell, because you asked him who was the most professional actor or actress that you have ever worked with. Do you remember what he said about that?
Yeah, I think I think the most admiration he had was for Dakota Fanning. Is that what you heard?
Yeah. He said he worked with her 2 different times and said she was the most professional actor that he has ever worked with, and went into great detail. And Cam's just popping the questions off to him, and I'm just sitting there with my mouth wide open.
I don't know why those questions pop in my head. I'm probably missing something, but yeah, because we're watching my wife and I are watching a series now. Well, we're about done with it, but called The Alienist. I think it's a series running on one of the major networks, but it's a story set back in the late 1800s in New York City, and it's about a group of detectives and psychologists and people like that who are finding serial killers way back at the turn of that century. And Dakota Fanning is one of the stars. And I was talking to him about, there's one scene where Dakota's character falls in love with this guy, and they, after about halfway through the second season, they embrace and have this real passionate kiss. And the next thing, you see them there in bed together, and I'm like, no, that's Dakota Fanning, man. She's a little girl. I remember her in the movie Man on Fire. Creasy, and so, and then he said she's one of the most professional actresses that he's ever worked with. She is professional from start to finish, and he seemed to have just a huge amount of respect for her, and she really is a good little actress. She's a good one.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk a little bit about us meeting Todd? And because I guess with him being from British Columbia and having some controversy around him, but I really found him to be quite a charming person. And he was, you kind of think somebody that's gone out with Survivor Man and done these different documentaries, he might have an air about him, but he was nothing like that, was he?
No, he's and I interviewed him 5 or 6 months ago, and I got all kind of blowback in the comment section. I got a ton of emails of people saying they weren't going to watch my channel anymore because I supported Todd Standing and all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't support or not support him. I just interviewed him because he is an interesting person. And I got that from him when I talked to him several months ago last winter, just over the phone. Todd is a very candid, unassuming guy, and he doesn't care what people think about him. And I don't care about his research. I don't care about the evidence. I don't care about what he's done. And look, I think there's people with the Sawdust Beast group that know all it takes is for one person to say, this isn't true, this is made up, this, that, and the other, and then this thing snowballs and it becomes unmanageable. And at some point, you just have to throw your hands up and go, all I'm doing is showing you what I found. I'm not making any of this up. I'm not whatever. And that's the posture that Todd's taken. And I asked him, when I first interviewed him, I said, there's a lot of controversies. I knew there was because you put out a piece of evidence, and the first thing people do to get views, and there's a half a dozen channels that do this, and they analyze the video or they analyze the sound, and they determine that it's not real or that it's a hoax. Now, how they do this, I don't know. But what happens is 10,000 people that see that video instantly change their mind and follow, it's like a Pied Piper, and they just follow along with that line of thinking. And then they spend the rest of their life bad-mouthing that person, and they don't know anything about them, nothing about them. And that's always upset me because, or it kind of hacked me off because I don't make judgments like that on people unless it's blatant. I think there's been one guy that's admitted to this Rick Dyer guy.
Uh-huh.
He admitted to what he did, but that's the only one I know of. That everybody else pretty much sticks by their guns. But back to Todd, he is an absolutely unassuming, happy-go-lucky, never negative, always positive kind of guy. We sat there for 30 minutes waiting on them to show up. And come to find out, Todd comes from British Columbia just on his own. I mean, someone told him there was some activity in Alabama. He wanted to come down this time of year in the heat of the summer. Why he came down in this time of year, I don't know. But he did, and it was 90, 92, 93 degrees there all week. There he is, no fanfare, nobody around him, nothing, camping out by himself in the middle of the woods and doing his thing. Now, all these people that criticize him, they don't do that. They don't do that kind of stuff. But he was doing it. He flew all the way from British Columbia. We just caught up with him. I think it was the second to the last day that he was there. He had already been there the whole week. And he goes out in the woods of Alabama that he is totally unfamiliar with, leaves his tent, stays out in those woods all night long, all by himself, nobody around, and is trying to make contact with these creatures in that area. I mean, it's enough to blow you away. And it's not like he was just saying he did it. We were there. We saw what was going on. And he got out of the car, and I shouldn't have done it. But I'm like, Todd. And he goes, who are you? And I said, I'm Cam Buckner. And I reached up and I put my arms around him and I hugged him. And I said, oh man, you smell great. And he looked at me kind of funny. And I said, no, I know you've been out in the woods all week. I figured you would stink, And he goes, oh no, there's a creek and a waterfall down there. I've been showering every day in the waterfall. So, I mean, he's really doing it, And then we talked for several hours after that, just around the picnic table. And there were a lot of people had showed up there, this reporter and, some other people. And so it's hard. I brought my little podcast machine and I wanted to record him, some of his stories. Mark, doesn't he have some great stories about bears and
fantastic stories? Because they actually use him with tracking lost people in the wilderness. And those stories really stuck out to me of him able to be that type of a guide.
Yeah, and so I got the same impression from him as I was describing about you guys. He's very inclusive of anyone who's around him. He will carry on a conversation with anybody, just like you've known him for 20 years. I mean, he's just that way. Now, I'm not a Todd Standing fanboy, but I'm not a Sawdust Beast fanboy either. I just like people who I like. And whether his evidence is authentic or if I don't know anything and I don't care about it, but I know as a person, he's very approachable and he's fit. He had shaved, he had cut his hair and shaved he's clean shaven. He looks totally different than he does in most of the publications that you see him in. And he's just a real likable guy. I enjoyed being around him. And it was, he's going to come back I think he's going to Florida at some point this winter, and he's coming back to Alabama at some point this winter. And I think he'll feel a little more at home with it colder, because he's used to that freezing cold up in BC. So he was suffering. He was suffering in that heat. He was not used to that heat.
I'll tell you something else he wasn't used to. He wasn't used to cottonmouths. He kept asking me questions about cottonmouths because they just don't have them up there, in British Columbia. And he wanted to know everything about them because he did not want to run into one.
And for people who, have a thing against him, I'm telling you, And if you were to walk into that campground, into that primitive campground where there is no running water, no electricity, anything, and you saw what he had been doing all week on his own in totally unfamiliar territory. I mean, this is a guy who lives in British Columbia, and he's in the foothills of the mountains in North Alabama. I mean, he was totally out of his element. He was unfamiliar with the wildlife and the the plant life. He didn't know what poison ivy was. I don't think he's probably ever been eat up with chiggers. I bet he got them at some point. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you're used to that high alpine type climate and wildlife and the plant life, and then you jump off down here into this poison ivy, briars, and sloughs full of cottonmouths and stuff. But he did it. I mean, he was thriving in that environment, and that's what he does.
And there was actually a lady, Miss Lanita, that says that she has them on her property. So Todd and Michelle went out to Miss Lanita's property, and he actually found signs. He found a print. He found a lot of stuff, and I just got to do a shout out to Miss Lanita, because she brought enough Kentucky Fried Chicken to feed an army. You would have been happy, Larry Porch.
Did she bring mashed potatoes and gravy?
She brought all the sides. She even brought a cake to top it off with.
I'd have been happy. Y'all could have talked all night, and I'd have sit over there with that bucket and a spoon.
I remember when she rolled up, I thought, "Oh, thank God, Larry in here's not. We wouldn't even get a wing out of this deal."
You're talking about Todd and whether you believe him or not. There's that guy, How to Hunt guy, that talks about how he feels like government people come into the community to discount evidence and people that bring real evidence to the forefront. And I've always thought, I don't know about none of that. But I do know other people that have brought real evidence and had the same thing happen to them. Now, I don't know if what he says is true about the government trying to do it to make people think it's not so. I think the community is just so jaded, and some of them are egotistical and think they know everything. And if it don't fit their little agenda that they've got going, they try to discount anything brought because it don't fit the way they want it to go. So I don't know. I hear him say that and seen it happen. So who knows? I don't know if Todd is a hoax or not. You see all those stupid videos where they're saying that's his face, but people tend to make whatever they want say what they want.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But like you said, Cam, you seen him out there in the woods doing what he does, and most of these people you will see at the KFC eating a bucket of chicken because that's as far as they can make it.
You and Eric and Kane and Mark would love running with this guy. I mean, he's right up your alley. He's a maniac in the woods. But back to what you were saying, I don't know what the How to Hunt guy talks about, but I know this. You don't need the government to suppress evidence.
No.
I mean, the Bigfoot community, which I'm not a part of, I'm at the peripheral of it.
And you're lucky.
I refuse to get in it, and I don't show evidence. I will not show pictures because everybody's just going to say it's a hoax. It's almost like people say in church, if Jesus was standing right next to you, you would say he wasn't Jesus. You try to prove he wasn't Jesus. It's the same thing on a totally different level. But with Bigfoot, any evidence that's brought forward, people aren't going to believe it anyway. So there's all this government conspiracy stuff. I think the government even knows. We don't have to do anything.
That's absolute truth.
It eats itself alive.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's my opinion, and probably made some of your audience mad, but I've said it before. A lot of these people that they spend their whole, like, there's YouTube channels, there's podcasts, and that's all they do is try to prove other people wrong instead of really looking at it, meeting them. Hey, let me come meet you. Let's talk about this. Show me where you saw it. Show me how you got it. They don't do that. They just put up a video and discount them. And then here's, half of the whole Bigfoot community believes them. They run off on a tangent, and forevermore, that person has to take crap from the whole community. So it's a sad, sad state of affairs. But that's why Dixie Cryptid never shows footage or anything. I'm not going down that road.
Well, Todd talked about as many people that hates him. He's got that many people that love him. And the late Dr. Bernagel, butchering that name. I can butcher the English language. Dr. Meldrum, Mr. Gimlin. Mr. Gimlin, he told me a story about he was at a conference, and people are kind of looking sideways at Todd and stuff. And Mr. Bob Gimlin got tired of it and said, "Do you mind if I say something?" And he stood up on a table and gave kudos to Todd Standing and said, "What y'all are doing to him today is what they did to me 40 years ago."
Yeah.
And where now people are giving me awards and acclimates, he says, y'all will be doing this to Todd in 30 years. And so I think that it's important that you never go in with some type of preconceived opinion. And really, most of these people that are negative, and I'm not just talking about Todd Standing, you look at leaders of groups that are out there. I know one, he probably don't go out in the woods but twice a year. And the rest of the time is spent behind a computer screen eating Kentucky Fried Chicken.
He's posting right now that Base TV and Dixie Cryptid support Todd Standing. I guarantee it.
Well, I tell you what, I'll take that. I've got broad shoulders, and I will take that. And I would rather be around humble and honest people than I would to be around somebody that's egotistical.
Well, like Cam Buckner used to say, you can give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I don't give a crap.
But that's the way Todd is. He's a real humble guy. And what you see in his publications, Todd is so Todd has tunnel vision, and he wants to bring awareness of this creature to as many people as he can. And he is so sure that he can do it. And he's just one of those real driven people. And, but at the same time, and I've got, with his permission, I turned that recorder on, and I've got all kinds of great, really humble stories. And a lot of times where he goes, we thought this was this and we were wrong. How many times did he say that, Mark? I
don't know, but I know people that are out there right now that has never said that.
Right. So he's just a real person. He's not, and I'm trying to go through that audio. There were some kids there. There were a lot of background conversations going on, and there were a lot of people who, there was just a lot of side conversations, and I'm trying to pull out some of that stuff and present a podcast, hopefully in the next month or two. It's going to take a while to do that, but um, show you really what a really real guy he is. And he has a treasure trove of unbelievable. He's a great storyteller, great storyteller. And it's not just Bigfoot. Anything he talks about, you kind of lock in and zero in on him, and you just shut up and listen, and it's all really good stuff. So I really enjoyed seeing him and meeting him. I think he's a genuine person. I don't support or not support his evidence. I just don't know. I don't know. I don't know. What's up with that? But as a person, he's a straight up guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Cam, that right there is why your channel has succeeded, Dixie Cryptid, because no matter the story or what, you stay neutral to the story and the storyteller, and you tell it as they tell it. And at the end of it, you don't huff and puff and say, oh, that's got to be bull or whatever. Yeah. You take it as it is and present it as it is.
Yeah.
And you do it genuinely and sincerely because you like to hear the story and hear the details and the different aspects of everything. And that is relayed in the stories, the way you read them out and tell them, and how you treat people.
If these things are real, and I think they are, one day we're all going to know what, and I heard Todd say this, one day we're all going to know what visuals were real and which ones were fake, which audible audio recordings were real and which ones were not. And we're going to know what all the stories that were true and which ones weren't. And it just goes back to what you and Mark always say, let the evidence speak for itself. It doesn't need any commentary on my part. Just let the evidence that people bring to the table speak for itself. Don't y'all agree with that?
I do.
Yes.
And speaking of the Dixie Cryptid channel, could I put you on the spot and ask you to read us a story?
I thought we had made it almost an hour. I was able to get out of. How much time we got, Mark?
We got all the time you want until Miss April starts banging on that door and says, "Get your hide up in here."
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get in by about 9:30. But all right, I got a couple picked out. This is probably gonna show all my blemishes on my face with all this light on my face, but y'all just close your eyes. I'm going to just share 2 or 3 little things here that I picked out today that none of them are really super exciting or anything, but I think they're interesting. I'll do the smallest one first. Let me find it. I get little short emails all the time, and I was thinking about the other day, my wife and I were driving somewhere, and we were talking about, she's not into the Bigfoot thing, but she said, what would you do if a Bigfoot just ran across the road right there? And I'm like, she always asks me that stuff. What would you do if? And I'm like, I don't know. I'd probably say, whoa, did you see that? Or how do you know what you're going to do? But a lot of encounters are like that. Something big, tall and dark darts across the road in front of you or behind you. You see it in your rear view or whatever. And so a lot of the stories are real short, and this is one of them. This man, his name is Buddy. He says, while checking out at the Tractor Supply, I had on a Bigfoot t-shirt. The cashier said she liked my shirt and that she had seen one of those things. She was in a backfield putting a bridle on her horse, and her horse got really nervous. She looked around and she saw this creature stand up. It looked at her briefly, and then it started walking right at her. Her horse pulled the lead out of her hand and ran back to the barn. The cashier said that she took another look at the Bigfoot, seeing that it was still walking toward her, and she ran back to the barn with her horse. She said people don't believe her story, but she knows what she saw. And this happened in Miami County, Ohio. So there's a short little, it's a brief encounter. And how much can you write about that encounter? And I'm going to start sharing these more and more because uh, I, I think they're important. All right, here's an email that I got from my friend up in Wyoming. He sent me several emails, and I've actually shared a couple on my channel. This is not a story, these are some theories that he has on cryptids. He says this is not necessarily for publication, but if you want to use it, so be it. But it's mainly something for you to cogitate on. I don't even know what that word means. Sounds like something to do with an upset stomach. One aspect of cryptid interactions with humans, more specifically that of dogman encounters, is that these things constantly create abject terror in their victims, and then they run off. People are terrorized for hours while huddled in tents or chased down in their cars at 50 miles per hour or bluff charged, or they find themselves running from door to window to door as a creature rattles doorknobs, scratches on glass, or stomps across their rooftop. The fear thus generated is palpable and often scars the victim for life. Robert Monroe is looked upon as the father of the out of body experiences, which I think goes with an acronym OBE. His first book was written in 1971, long before the study of cryptids became vogue. I've read all his books years ago, way before I became involved in cryptids. Monroe learned or came to understand that certain cryptids actually feed on this energy. Energy derived from fear is apparently of greater efficacy or value than other forms of energy such as happiness. When's the last time let me read this sentence again. When's the last time you heard of a group of dogmen hanging around as wedding guests? This might answer the question that I and many others have as to why dogmen in particular seem to go out of their way to utterly terrify a person and then hastily depart, causing no or only minor physical harm. Keep in mind that this aspect of cryptid behavior was a very minor part of Monroe's writings. His books and eventual creation of the Monroe Institute to promote OBEs as opposed to the study of cryptid behavior. But in my humble opinion, it may answer the question of why these things terrorize and then depart. It would seem patently obvious that if one of these things found a mark, a person highly susceptible to PTSD, the cryptid would repeatedly attack or harass such an individual who could continually provide this negative energy to feed upon. It just makes sense to me. As an aside, I'm of the opinion that a universal law may be in effect prohibiting a creature from killing humans. But certain creatures are just evil enough to exort such prohibitions, giving rise to the missing 411 type scenarios. I thought you may find this an interesting aspect of this entire topic. And then he always signs off this way. Time to head back to the home before they learned once again that I've escaped. So his theory, and he's mainly talking about dogmen, but I interviewed a guy yesterday, and I just put his interview up at 3:00 today. And we didn't talk about this in the interview, but he called me this afternoon. I'm going fishing this weekend. I was filling my boat up with gas, and he called me and he goes, we were just talking, and he said, why do you think I got to see one and you didn't? And there's always a discussion about why some people get to see one and some people don't. And time again in these stories, a lot of times Bigfoot will uh, just appear. You know, he'll show himself, and it's apparent that they want you to see them. And then there's people like me who never see anything. I never see a shadow. I never see a track, anything. And maybe this explains it. He said he thought, well, he actually said, until I met you, which I don't know why he thought this, but I thought that it was, you know, people with a good heart and a willing, what's the word, an inclusive or an accepting type personality would be more likely to see one, as opposed to a person that would push the idea of Bigfoot out just instantly. But now, on the other hand, we have this negative energy feeding frenzy that, and I'm reading here, he said that, you know, that they're looking for people highly susceptible to PTSD. Now, not everybody that sees a Bigfoot has PTSD, so that may not explain it, but it is an interesting concept. You guys have any ideas on that?
I'm really open to any kind of theories, and I think it's important that we do have theories and opinions, but that we don't set them in concrete, and that we stay open for anything for any new type of evidence or anything like that could change our minds. Because I know my mind has been changed several times, and it's just because I have been honest with myself with the evidence that I have seen. Larry, what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that it's a possibility, because some people seem to have more sightings and have more interaction than other people. It's plausible. It could be. They could feel that energy, or that, I don't know what you'd want to call it. But it may be why I don't ever see nothing. If I get walked up on in a hammock and don't get scared, then they're like, ugh, I got to go somewhere else.
And you know, then on the other hand, did I interrupt you, Larry?
No.
On the other hand, I started turkey hunting when I was about 24 years old. And the very first turkey hunt I ever went on, I saw a bird. I didn't get a shot at him, but I saw a bird. And it was 10 years before I saw another turkey. And I got after them every spring. I hunted. I could hear them gobbling, and I knew they were there, but I never saw another one. And the next one I saw is the worst mistake he ever made, but it was 10 years later. 10 years later when I killed him. And so it could be just as simple as that, you know? I mean, and I know guys all those years, oh, hell yeah, I'll kill 3 this year. Oh, I hunted all day and didn't see a thing. Got walking back to my truck. I'm 10 yards from my truck. One flies right down the middle of the road, and I pop him out of the sky. And I'm like, and they'll go fishing. And I'll spend 2 weeks trying to get on the crappie, and I can't find them. Yet they every time they go, they're catching 30 crappie every time they go. So you know guys like that, Larry?
Yes, sir. So I turned into one of those guys deer hunting. I used to go and was just tensed up the whole time wanting to kill a big deer. Yeah. And then here comes my son, and I start taking him, and it shifts for me wanting him to kill it, and I don't care. And 2 or 3 years in a row, the biggest one on the farm walked out in front of me, and I killed it. And my son to this day thinks I'm the greatest deer hunter in the world.
But we know different.
Yeah, we do. But it seems like you put off something that either attracts them or runs them off. I don't know. It's crazy. I know it's some woo type stuff, but who cares? I don't give a crap.
Well, I just want to remind the dog pound, if you got questions for Cam, to go ahead and put them in all caps. We really haven't gotten that many questions. I think everybody has just been in awe of hearing Cam talk and just enjoying the conversation. But so
Cam don't think so. He's too humble. He's a superstar, and he's sitting there shaking his head no.
I ain't no superstar. I'm just a redneck.
I know I heard you say one time, and it tickled me, and I steal it from you every so often. But you said one time, don't you get me confused with them hillbillies. I'm a redneck.
Damn right. Some guy left a comment on one of my videos recently, and he said, I used to be a hick. Now I moved to the city and I'm not a hick anymore. I want to be a hick like you again. And I'm like, who the hell are you calling a hick? I ain't no hick. I'm a redneck, and I'm not a hillbilly. I'm not a hill person. I don't know. Those people are different than we are. I'm just telling you.
Yeah, we grew up in Memphis, didn't we, Cam?
That's right.
Larry don't go to Memphis for nothing. All right, Cam, I'm going to shoot you the first question.
Okay.
What is your favorite type of story to tell? Do you enjoy one type of Bigfoot encounter more than others, or do you enjoy all of them?
I like them all. Of course, I have to say that. But there's some that I get that are just, and everybody's gonna think I'm totally comfortable with my manhood, that I can be sensitive, and I love some of the sweet stories. There was one story a lady wrote, and I did the interview or the story, and I can't remember all the details, but she looked over and Bigfoot was playing with her dog. And I just love that story. I thought it was the greatest thing. And
yeah.
I don't know if any of these stories are true or not. And I've said that 100 times on my channel, but I love it with the really sweet stories. I like those. But I also like them, the real intense dangerous stories where the Bigfoots are aggressive. That's real interesting to me. It's just real interesting to me. So I like them all, but I tend to like the nice ones better.
What kind of percentage do you get on the nice encounters or the aggressive encounters? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, it's probably, I would, at worst, 10% aggressive, and the rest of them are either just benign or anecdotal, or if it's a full visual or some kind of interaction with the creature, it's a pleasant, I get a lot of them where people say you think they should be terrified, but they're all of a sudden they're at total peace when they, the story that leads up to the interview that I put out today, same thing. This woman had found, they were little girls, and it's the classic, and it's the first story I've ever gotten like this. Because you hear about them pulling these trees up, turning them upside down, and shoving the trunk in the ground. Yeah. And I think that's a Northwest Territory type behavior. I don't think that happens down here much, but it's the first story I'd ever heard of that. Well, a friend of hers told her that it had happened. She was 7 or 8 years old. They go and find the tree, and it's there. And then when they're coming out, she's face to face with the Bigfoot. And her friend was terrified, but she was at total peace. And she said it had a funny face, had a funny look on its
face. Okay, our friend Diane Fowler asked, Cam, how did you get started telling stories, and what inspired you to start your channel?
Well, I talked about it early in this live stream. I got to. I'm trying not to go be too long-winded here, but I've always been interested in people and their stories, and I don't know why. I want to know what makes people tick. What do they do? Why do they like what they do? Where did they meet their wife? Uh, why did you want to? I ask all these weird questions, and I get a lot of strange looks. But I love to know their stories. Well, regarding the Bigfoot thing, uh, as far as stories go and Bigfoot groups or clubs, the Outlaws are hands down the best storytellers in the whole cryptid world. Those guys, Bear, Coonbo, Matt Knapp, that show, Bigfoot Crossroads, it was on for so many years, and Matt still produces that show. But I, I just would listen to those shows, and I had never heard anything like it. Never heard anything like it. And then I met these guys, and they're exactly the same in person as you hear them on YouTube. And I just got consumed with these stories, and I started reading, looking up stories on the internet. And I remembered stories that people had told me, and that's how I started my channel. I started writing the stories that people had told me through the years. Well, then I ran out of I ran out of material, and I asked people. I said, "Well, I'm out of material. If you have a story, send it to me, and I'll share it with everybody else." And people started emailing me, and it just kind of went from there. And the reason I started my channel was because I'm interested in. I don't know this for sure about myself, but I seem to get a lot of satisfaction with this as a creative outlet. I'm in the engineering business for my regular job, and it's real satisfying to complete a project, whether it took a week or 2 months, and finally get it off to my customer and know that I've accomplished something. And I get that same feeling or sense of accomplishment when I complete a video. And I enjoy the whole process, the reading of the stories, the editing. I have to do a lot of editing to almost every story. The recording, the editing, making it the way I read it is not how it winds up being. I make it sound perfect, but I don't read it perfectly, but I cut little pauses out, and I do little things so that when it gets to your ear, that it's a pleasing piece of audio. And the only thing I'm not really that big on is the visual part. It's mainly because I don't have time to go out and shoot a lot of video. But I'm pretty good at filming things and drone videos and things like that. Lately, I've been just using royalty-free stuff, campfires. Those aren't my campfires. It's footage I bought. But that's how I got started, and I never dreamed that this channel would be popular. And compared to some of the real heavy hitters on YouTube, this is not a big channel. But in the Bigfoot genre, it's a medium-sized channel, and I'm just tickled to death with it. And I've said forever, and I mean this, if it dropped to 100 views per video, I'd still do it because I enjoy it so much. I would probably spend more time writing than I would recording, but I feel how am I trying to say? I'm trying to figure out how to say this. I kind of feel a responsibility to keep giving these stories out because I get so many emails from people who are sick or laid up in bed or in the hospital, and it was it was nice to hear this video and take my mind off of it. And I just kind of like filling people's expectations. I guess I'm a pleaser to a degree. So that's a long-winded answer, but you asked, so there it is.
All right. Well, David Blaylock asks, has any one story made you really believe?
I really believe anyway, and they're all equally You know, they all carry equal weight in my view. Some of them are a little outrageous, I think. I did a story the other day about a Bigfoot taking a guy who's who was training some fighting dogs. And I didn't give the video any preface. A lot of times I like to do videos and just do the story. Just do the story in the video, move on to the next one. But I have a friend of mine here in this county who was deputy on the sheriff's department for years, and he's left and he does something else now. But I've got, I think, 4 or 5 stories from him on my channel, and he was here doing some work for me about a month ago, and he was asking about the channel, and he loved the way I wrote the stories that he had given me, and these are all stories that he swears are true. And he told me this story about this guy back in the 90s who lived here and was training those fighting dogs, and his property backed up to some woods, and the guy vanished and nobody's ever seen him again. It's still a cold case file, and you know, I don't think there's much of an investigation left because I think they suspect that it's probably drug related. But this guy told me, he goes, everybody knows there's Bigfoot that live in those woods, and it's not far from here. It's not far from where I live. And there's a group of people that are like-minded who think that the Bigfoot did not like him whipping those dogs and fighting those dogs, and those Bigfoot took him. So I wrote that story around that. And that's his opinion. And so that's how, you know, maybe 15 or 20 of the stories out of about 400 I've already done kind of come about that way. But it's so interesting, and it's hard to just, I would rather put it in a kind of a literary, not that I'm a literary person, but put it in a nice, concise story format so that it's pleasing when you hear it, as opposed to just saying, hey, I got this friend of mine and he told me this and he thinks this, and it just seems a little more entertaining that way. And that's how I choose to do it. So but no story makes me believe any more or less. Some of them are real interesting, like that one today with the tree turned upside down. That Bigfoot behavior has always haunted me. I don't know what I would do if I walked up on that in the woods. Y'all have any ideas on that, guys?
Not really, because it's kind of like what you said earlier. That's just something that we don't see down here in the South like that. Now, we have seen big trees that have been broke off and moved and nowhere near the root system. And I guess that really baffles me, because I'm thinking, well, how many men would it take to do something like that in the middle of the woods? You can't get equipment in there to do something like that. And so that's just something that really baffles me on that.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's like out of a horror story, you know.
Yeah. Con Squatch asks Cam, have any recent updates? I guess, do you have any recent updates from the Southwestern Colorado Hunting Club?
Hunting guide.
No, I've tried to get back in touch with him several times. After that first interview, we had no less than 5 dates set to do a follow-up interview. And I'm not saying he stood me up, but I would call at the exact time that we agreed on, and he would never answer. And I'm the kind of person, if I'm supposed to call you and you're supposed to pick up at 3:00, I'll give you one shot, and I got to move on to something else. I'm not going to chase you around. I did this 5 times, and we we still text every once in a while, and I'll say, dude, when you're ready to do another interview, everybody wants to hear from you. And he'll go, yeah, I'll get back with you. And supposedly there's been a lot of stuff happen, but I can't get him on the phone. I don't know what the deal is, but I'd love to talk to him, but I'm not chasing him around. I'm, like a turd stuck to a cat's butt. I'm not going to do that to anybody.
I understand that. That's the way I do Mark. When I ask him, do you want to go to LVL camping, and he don't answer, I'm like, all right, good enough. All right. Mavis Spillman asks, any more stories from Texas?
Hey, Mavis. Texas. Yeah, I've got a bunch from Texas. I've got them stacked up. I'm just trying to get through them as fast as I can. And yeah, I'm sure I think I read through one today that was from Texas that I'll be pulling up pretty quick. Yeah, so we got some.
Okay, Spencer Jameson asks, Cam, out of all the stories you've heard, which ones gave you the most goosebumps?
I say this every time someone asks me. It's the story from Patricia. Patricia's passed away, and her son sent I think I said this in the last live stream I did with you, but she paints a picture in her story of on a moonlit night. She's in her bedroom. She's a 20-something young woman. She's up late. She's looking out the window. She hears a ruckus out the window, and down the hill, they live in the hills of West Virginia or Kentucky, I can't recall. Full moon. She sees these 4 creatures walk out of the tree line in the moonlight, coming down the rows of corn, standing 3 or 4 feet above the top of full-grown corn, coming right at her house. There's not much description of it, and it's not a real eloquently written piece, but I had that image stuck in my mind, and they're coming straight at her house. And then the dogs go crazy. She loses sight of them when they get below, she loses line of sight with them. And a dog is attacked, a dog's injured. I never found out if the dog lived or died, but just that image in my head of those dark figures up in the fall, up against that light colored corn, coming right down the rows, 4 of them coming down the rows right at her house. Can you see that in your mind?
Yep. And that's the only place I want to see
it. That's one of the most descriptive. And then the one today with the tree turned upside down. And then the man I interviewed, the coach down in Mississippi, who was talking about a sound that he heard when he was 11 or 12 years old with his dad down in the Tom Bigby River bottoms. And then a few years later, when he's in college, he goes to a 38 special concert at Starkville, Mississippi State. And he said that bass, that sound coming out of those speakers, how it rattles your chest. He goes, that's what it felt like. When he said that, it gave me chills up my back, because I thought that must be what it feels like when they really hit you with that sound. Because I've been in front of those speakers, and they are loud, and they bounce you around, man.
Yep, that's for sure. All right, Cam. Shelby wants to know, can you post the news article that Mark was talking about, I guess, when it's released, I guess from the reporter that interviewed y'all down in Alabama?
Well, I'll have to go and look at the newspaper website. I know one has already been posted, and so I tell you what, I will tomorrow morning put that on the Beast page.
All right.
And our friend Tony from Fishing, Gaming, and Guitars asked, Cam, have you heard from the Colorado rancher you interviewed?
Have you heard from him?
I was just talking about that. That's the guy I was talking about.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on to Bomber Cam. You have helped him get through some of the hardest times in his life, taking off work alone and broke, and was angry and in denial of his health. He wants to thank you, Cam, for being there for him, and he wants you to know that we all love you. How about that?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. You see why I feel compelled to keep putting videos out? You know, it's not like I don't feel like I can do it just when I want to. I kind of got myself on a schedule because, I mean, it feels silly to me. I believe these people when they say that. And so I just trying to keep pace with them, you know, that's all I'm trying to do. So, and I can't get a feel if people enjoy the stories better or the interviews better, but I'm just kind of mixing them up. The interviews are more fun for me than anything. And so, yeah, thank you for saying that. I get emails like that a lot. I had one woman who was in recovery from drug addiction, and she said she wasn't even into Bigfoot. She just kind of wandered across my channel. And her whole time in recovery, I think she was in a place where they help you, you know, recover from drug addiction. She said the whole, you know, she said they spend a lot of alone time, and she would listen to those videos just over and over and over. And she went through my whole library several times. And she said it was just something about it that helped her get through it. And she thanked me. And I never dreamed. I mean, I just thought these were just silly stories in the beginning that I came up with that people might get a kick out of. I never dreamed people would like it to this degree, but I'm glad they do.
Well, stories do take you away from your real mundane life and put you in another situation.
Yeah.
Even for a few minutes. And that does help a lot of people cope and get through things just to be able to escape.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. I kind of know the answer to this because me and Cam had a 8-hour road trip together last weekend. But CD Squatcher
Bragger
asked, hater, how far behind are you with the mailbag? And he follows up with, I sent you a story and have been listening for it for several months.
Yeah, I talked about that in my video today. Actually, I've got about 700, between 7 and 800 to do right now.
Wow.
Sometimes people will send me an email, and I talked about this in the video, and I didn't mean it in a bad way, but it just kind of struck me as odd that they'll send me, this one guy sent me a story on a Monday, and Thursday he sent me another email pretty much cussing me out, telling me to, you know, if that's as fast as I could do it, just forget the whole thing.
I'm sorry about that, Cam.
Then I had a guy, was that you, Larry?
I wouldn't do you that way.
Then I had a guy send me a story, and it was a great story. I mean, great story. And I was looking forward to doing it. And it had all these illustrations with it and stuff that I was thinking about. They weren't pictures, they were illustrations he had come up with. I think he had drawn them, and it was a great story. Well, then I get an email from him and he's cussing me out. He's telling me to F off and all this kind of stuff, forget doing his story. And I looked at that for a minute, and he and I had been corresponding back and forth. And it didn't make sense. And I'd only had the story about 3 weeks. And then he sent me that email. And so a couple of days later, usually I'll just delete those and forget about them, but it bothered me. it bothered me that he was being so mean and ugly about it. And so I finally decided I'd send an email back, and I'm like, why did you change your mind? You spent all this time on this story and these illustrations, and then 3 weeks later you tell me to F off. What's the deal? And he showed me a screenshot of a comment that he made on one of my videos, blistering one of the writers of another story. In other words, degrading the person who had sent that story in. So I blistered him back under the reply. I told him to get off my channel, and I don't put up with that. You can call me anything you want, but if you degrade a person that sent a story in, it sets me off, and I will not put up with it. And so it was him that made that comment, and I thought, well, I'm glad I know this now, because I wouldn't have shared your story if it was the last story I had. Don't send me a story and then start blistering other people for their stories, you idiot. It's like, I mean, it's just all kind of things like that. They're very few, but they're so odd when I get them. And so, yeah, I've had some really strange stuff come up like that.
It happens.
Yeah.
All right. You've only got about 7, 8, 9 more, and it's 9:33. So we either got to hit them quick or not hit them.
How about we take 2?
Take 2?
Can we do 2 questions? And I'll do 8 or 9. That's fine.
No, that'll work. I'll let Mark pick them. It's his show.
Go ahead, Larry.
Well, I'm going to look through them here so I can make somebody mad. How about that?
Okay. Well, EEP Pulling Videos asks, do you ever get any stories from Maryland?
I don't recall getting anything from Maryland, no. I may have done one. It's hard to remember them all. But I don't recall one, no.
All right. I'm going to combine 2 of them because they're government-based. All right. Let's see. Denise Babbitt asked, if the government doesn't recognize Bigfoot, why have some states made it illegal to hunt them? And then Sweetheart says, how about if the government knows about these creatures and they have signs of intelligence? How would government grant them rights and go about protecting them? The only way they could protect is by denying their existence. So you can kind of combine those 2. What do you think the government knows and don't know or cares about, or what's your opinion on that?
I think that's a good one for Mark. I don't know. Personally, I don't think there's a big government conspiracy, and I don't think that the government thinks that if they admit that they know Bigfoot is real and they have, perfect evidence, or even captive creatures, that they're holding it back to protect the logging industry. I don't think big timber industry is in on it. I'm just not that big on those conspiracy things, but they could be true. But like I said before, the government doesn't have to do anything. All you have to do is let another Bigfoot organization know that this other organization has some evidence, and they'll destroy it in a minute. So, So I don't really have that much of an opinion, but I tend to not follow that line of thinking. What do you think, Mark and Larry?
Well, I think we're all on the same page with that. This community it eats its own self up. And if that time was spent in the woods trying to gather evidence and trying to learn from each other and trying to share what they have learned, then we wouldn't be in this boat. Okay, David Meritor asked, with all the stories told, have you found any that were similar to your time in the woods? And I guess that could mean hunting or fishing or going out with me, Larry, and Kane and Eric.
No. Is he asking, have I seen some evidence similar to what we hear in the stories myself?
I believe so.
Yeah.
No. I know that one weekend we were in a place, we were up early in the morning, and something threw a rock off of that creek. Do you remember that, guys?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And, you know, I've been in those mountains in camp, not those specific mountains, but in Arkansas and the Ozarks and up in Missouri and in Middle and East Tennessee. I've never heard a rock could just come loose from the side of a mountain, especially grown up with all of those rhododendrons, and, you know, there's a lot of vegetation holding that earth in there. I mean, this rock was thrown into that, and somebody saw something dark running up the mountain. I didn't see it, but that shook me up. And then that skunky smell we smelled that night.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it was just like out of the blue. Now, I know there's skunks up there, and it smelled exactly like a skunk. It didn't have all the other odors people describe. It was a musky skunk smell, and I think it was a skunk, but it was just weird how just for a brief moment, that for 5 minutes, that smell kind of came through our camp, and then it was gone.
And remember, me and you went up there, and I set out that recorder, and then the next day we went for a hike. And on that little ledge where I set that recorder, when we come back through, there was an X laying on the ground on both sides of that recorder.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty suspicious. And we can all attest to this, that there was nobody in there where we were at. I mean, this was a dead end road, and no cars coming in there, no hikers. I mean, we were back in the boonies. And so that was pretty cool, a pretty cool discovery when me and you went, come back from that hike and found those X's on both sides of that recorder we had set out the day before.
Yeah. And I think Eric had a visual that morning of that thing running up the mountain. I don't think bears run straight up a mountain.
Yeah.
No. All right, Cam, we're going to let you off the hook on the rest of the questions. If we didn't ask your question and you want it answered, put it in the comments on the YouTube, and Cam will be scouring that. And don't make him mad. If he gets mad. But Cam, we appreciate you coming on tonight. It's always great to talk to you, and it'd be nice to go out camping with you again.
Well, Larry, you just got to ride through Memphis sometime with me.
No, I'll go around Memphis. Bigfoot scares me less than Memphis does.
Okay, Cam, we would like to give you this opportunity for any final thoughts that you might have.
Yeah, I don't really have any. I just appreciate you guys and your including me in your, group to whatever degree that I'm useful. In other words, y'all, I've always told people, they'll say, why don't you, become a member of this? And I'm like, I don't have anything to contribute. So I'm just kind of a hang around, a tag along. I appreciate you guys letting me do that. And I was so excited when I called you the other day and you agreed to go with me. And for 3 or 4 days, I was going, Mark, now you don't have to go. And he's like, no, I'm going. I want to go. And, so thank you for including me. I've really enjoyed our friendship. And even though we may go 3, 4, 5 months and not even talk to each other, it's always like, because we've had experiences together, and it's almost like football or basketball. You know, you go through high school, you see those guys 20 years later, and you just pick right up where you left off. Yeah. And it's really that way with you guys. And I just appreciate that friendship. I think that would be that's what's on my mind right now.
Well, that's the most important thing. The rest is just icing on the cake.
Yep. Larry, what's your final thoughts?
Oh, I don't give a crap. I do hope Cam does make it to the meet and greet. We're going to decide. The group camp got shut down again because of COVID. So we're going to look for a place so we can still go primitive camp. So we're going to go find a place, and we will probably not disclose the location to everybody but the ones that say they're coming, just to keep any riffraff from passing through and getting in trouble from Mark.
Well, my final thoughts is how blessed I am to have met Cam 4 years ago. And if for some odd reason that you have not listened to his channel, I have put the link to his channel in our comment section. So make sure you go there and you subscribe. And also, I put a link to the Dixie Cryptid store. And Cam has some excellent merch in his store. And you have to check out the new face mask that he has on there, because they are hilarious. They are conversational starters. You could be walking through a store and somebody is going to see that mask and they are going to stop you and they are going to want to know where you got that mask. And you be sure to tell them where you got that mask. You got it from Dixie Cryptid. So we just want to thank you again, Cam Buckner, for coming on. You're such a good friend, and we love you, and we enjoy our time with you. And so just thank you, sir, for coming back on tonight.
You're welcome.
Beast TV would like to welcome all of our new Facebook members. We started this page to train and help people with analyzing audio, but it is evolved into much more than that. And I believe this past week, Shelly has added 89 people to our Facebook page. And we are so glad that you found us, and you are welcome. Make sure you check out our files tab. There are all kind of things that are on there that they're not even necessarily Bigfoot related, but they will help you in the woods. We also want to thank all of our new subscribers and our faithful followers. And be sure to check out our field evidence videos and check out our sister channel, Beast of the Woods. That's Larry's channel. And we would like to thank Shelly for sending us the questions from the chat room tonight. Thanks to all of our moderators for keeping our chat room kid friendly. And we just want to thank you for watching. And we will see you again. Same bat time, same bat channel. Night night, footers.
This has been a Sawdust production.